today in this COVID climate. We're limited to 20 people, and we've got 3, 6, 9, 10, 11, so we're good. I want to just say it's really great that you folks did turn out, and we get this moving along. And without further ado, I'd like to introduce our guest speaker, Jamie Schmale, our local MP. And Jamie was kind enough to volunteer to speak to us today, and he said, well, what do you want me to talk about? And I said, anything but politics. So when you're talking to a politician, that kind of makes it tough. But Jamie has
anything to talk about then.
Well, let's see what we're find out.
Thanks for having me.
But a little bit about Jamie.
It was a good drive.
Just a little bit about Jamie. He is our MP for Haliburton, Kawartha, Brock riding. Jamie also hosts the PC podcast Blueprint. That's on Tuesdays. And that's a great, if you're interested in what the opposition has to say about what's going on in Ottawa on different topics, it's well worth the half an hour that you can spend. Jamie is the Shadow Cabinet Minister for Families, Children and Social Development, and he was previously the Shadow Cabinet Minister for Aboriginal Affairs. So the guy is pretty well involved in Ottawa, so once he's told us about his topic for the day, then maybe we can open the floor to a few questions and maybe go where it goes. So Jamie, please.
Good afternoon, everyone. Give a shout out to my mask because we got a tech rider just down the road. The people over there. Thank you for inviting me. When Eric sent me the invite and said, do you want to come speak at the AGM? I thought, man, a chance to be normal again. Okay, I'm going to do this. So I appreciate that invitation and the opportunity to address you and the folks at home through the video chat that we have going on. A couple things I want to talk about. I'll talk about just what's going on with me personally, and then I'll go into a couple of topics that I think are fairly important right now, especially what's happening with COVID. Also, I want to talk about a project I've been working on for the past 5+ years, Save the Walleye, around Bobcaygeon, and how we can maybe work together on other topics. And then we can push into a few other topics, but I also want to open the floor to questions, and I don't know how long I have, so how long do I have? I'm going to time, you know what, I'm going to time myself.
As long as you want.
How long do you want me to speak for? How about 10 minutes? How's that? And then question. 10
10
minutes okay for everyone? I'm going to set my stopwatch so I don't go long. Okay. So, as was mentioned, I'm now the critic for Families, Children and Social Development. And what that means is it's my job to work with people in the communities all across Canada, within the industry, and within our caucus to develop an alternative to what the government's proposing. Because as a member of the official opposition, it's my job and our job to not only oppose but also give an option for people to choose from. And so when something comes out through the government, whether it be on childcare or the charitable section, it'd be followed within my portfolio to craft a response and respond to that minister one-on-one. So then it's also my job to create policy that would then go forward, hopefully into the next election, and be one of the platforms. So the portfolio itself, if you're looking on the government side, aside from national defense, it's probably the second biggest within the federal government. And it's spread out. That's the other difference. Because it involves Service Canada locations, the employees are spread out all around Canada, whereas in many other departments you have most of them in Ottawa and a few sprinkles here and there, the military accepted. So my portfolio covers, of course, the daycare part, it covers the charitable section, Canada Pension Plan, that type of thing. So it's fairly very interesting, and something is going to get very busy very soon, because there has been a chat of a national daycare program being announced at some point. It was in the speech from the throne, and I will have to work with colleagues and stakeholders from across the country in developing some alternatives and some different ideas to put forward to the Canadians. The other part of the job that is kind of been challenging has been through the COVID process. Parliament didn't sit for a number of months, as you might know, and in that time, a series of packages were brought into effect. A lot of them had to do with compensation, whether it be the Canada Emergency Response Benefit or the CERB. There's been the wage subsidy for businesses, there's been the rent program, there's been the emergency loan. So a whole swath of programs have been announced very quickly to deal with what was being asked of individuals and businesses, which is to stay home, stay safe, and lock down wherever possible. And so where I think Health Canada has a role as we move forward is in the role of rapid testing. Health Canada, in my opinion, has been a little slow in terms of approving some of the tests. A number of tests have been approved in the United States, have been approved in the European Union. And I think when you talk to many people in the field, they will say that the European Union is always kind of the gold standard. That's the tougher standard. So there are actually tests that are waiting for Health Canada's green light that have been approved in these jurisdictions. And one of them being a 3-minute test. So I had the opportunity to actually see it in action. It's basically like a diabetic test. They poke your finger, you drop a bit of blood, and in 3 minutes you know if you have COVID, you don't have COVID, or if you've ever had it and have the antibodies in your system to deal with it. So it's pretty amazing, in 3 minutes. So if you think about what we're dealing with now, we see rising numbers all across the globe. We see, even in Toronto and some of our big cities, we're seeing lockdowns go into effect. So how do we go forward? We can try locking down, and even if we told everyone in the world, you're going to lock down for 2 months, if there's one case of COVID anywhere, we're kind of back to where we are now a little bit. So how do we kind of live with it safely, fortify those that are the most vulnerable, which are in most cases are elderly, and those with underlying health conditions. And one way to do that, without a cure, vaccine, or treatment, I'll get into that in a second, is rapid testing. Because if I have COVID, I could test myself almost daily. Okay, I have COVID, I'm going to take myself out of circulation, and then I will save myself from spreading. Right now, you could go for days without knowing you actually have it. You could be infecting people all along the way. And how do you go about having Christmas with your friends and family, or New Year's? Well, if you knew who is positive and who isn't, we could move there. Or if an employee is going into a long-term care facility, works there as a personal support worker, could be tested before they walk in the door. In 3 minutes, you know whether or not that worker has it or not. So they're not bringing that virus into our most vulnerable. So that's one area where I think Health Canada could be a bit more vigilant and be responsive to what is going on. Having said that, we also have word that a vaccine, 3 that I know of that seem pretty reliable, that have promise, that are showing good signs of battling the virus within people of all ages, including the elderly. Some have different challenges. Some require extreme cold to keep it workable, and that would then create challenges in itself in terms of implementing that around the country on how do we get that. Others don't require such extreme that I've read, and many more are coming online all the time. So this is encouraging, and hopefully will get us back. So even if there is, say, a portion of the population that doesn't want to take the vaccine for fear of the side effects later on down the road, that's where the rapid testing part also helps out, where we are able to identify who has it, who doesn't, and who has had it and might have the antibodies to allow them to function and almost build that somewhat immunity that we read about. So we continue to work and push for that. As I said, Parliament's back in session now. It's been in session for a few months now. We're in modified cohorts going in, so it's not the full 338. We do it in shifts. We are broken down. We are spaced apart, and we also have the virtual Parliament too, where people are able to work from their constituency office or their Ottawa office or even at their home and still do the work. It's not entirely the same, but it's as close as possible based on the circumstances. The other project I've been working on for 5+ years, which may be of more interest here, is the Save the Walleye campaign. For those that don't know, I grew up in Botcajun. So I would remember every year a surge in tourism to that area around the Canada-US walleye tournament. You could check the license plate, right? There'd be license plates from all over the United States, all over Canada, and restaurants were packed, motels were booked, people were camping, it was great. And in the tourism community, like here in Haliburton County, the winters can be long, so we need to soak in everything we can in those short months that are a good chunk of our economy, which is the tourist season. And over the years though, excuse me, the walleye population within a number of the lakes, including sturgeon for example, have started to drop significantly. But the conversation was always, why is that happening? Some of the challenges we had were for a number of years, and this isn't something that started under me. I took this over from my predecessor, Barry DeVolen, is that we would always get from the Minister of Natural Resources that it was fishing conditions. We overfished. Or it was habitat. Well, okay, I'm sure that has a bit to do with it, but white suckers are also seeing the same decline as the walleye, but nobody fishes for white suckers. So why is that? So that's where we, with these community leaders, developed an idea for the Trent Severn Waterway with help required from the MNR. Is the pilot project to think about how the Trent Severn Waterway is doing business. So you know right at the Botcajun Dam, they have the hydraulic dam, so that means the water goes underneath. So it really doesn't move anything on top. So you might see some sediment, you might see just some buildup that shouldn't probably be there, whereas if you had the water going over top, you can rush that away, oxygen goes back, it allows everything to kind of get into balance, whereas now it's not. So if you look at the Botcajun Dam, there's the dam that they use most regularly, it has the hydraulic dam. On the other side is the dam they used to use, which was the stop logs, which allowed the water to go over top. So the pilot project was an idea to say, wait a second, why don't we just close the hydraulic dams and use the stop log dam just as a pilot project, see if that has the effect. See if that actually helps the spawning of the walleye, because if you know Botcajun, the spawning beds often are dry, or there's no circulation, or if there is, it's way too powerful. It's a weird combination that the hydraulic dams, we believe, have created for the walleye population. So by pushing it over top, we start to see all the problems. We hope we'll see the problems fix itself. Now this is a number of years where we want to keep going on this. The challenges we've had is, a number of them was with the Trent Severn Waterway, not wanting to do that. The other part was getting buy-in from the MNRF, which was quite challenging because according to them, the walleye population is declining because of fishing conditions or environment conditions, which we proved to them not to be the case. The MNRF has, within the last little while, under Minister Yakubuski, come online and actually supported the Save the Walleye program and wrote a letter to Canada's Environment Minister in charge of the Trent Severn Waterway to say, the MNRF is now getting behind this, let's use this as a pilot project. And unfortunately at this point, we've had a change in management of the Trent Severn Waterway, yet again, and so we are in a holding pattern until we figure out if we can work with them to try this pilot project. But this is something that's been going on for decades. Like this group that I met, like I said, met with my predecessor. And what sparked that was the investments that were done in infrastructure within the Trans Edward Waterway, which had committed to $500 million for a bunch of work all across the system. And so this was just a renewal, it just kind of tweaked them. They had basically given up. They had fought the bureaucracy for so long, they just gave up and moved on and found something else to do. So they heard this announcement, met with my predecessor, and then when I was elected in office in 2015, I took up the torch and tried to carry this, and we're still working with it. It's been very slow and painful in a lot of cases, but hopefully we're going to get some movement on this pilot project and hopefully see some improvement within the fishing conditions and the water quality too within the area. Because I also remember when I was a reporter, Lisa remembers probably when she was with the Lindsay Post, how often would water quality every weekend before the tourists come up, the health unit would test the water, and how often did they say the water in Bobcaygeon was unsafe for swimming or basically anything?
Yeah.
Almost every week.
The beach was always,
Yeah, there's something happening there. And it kind of all, we think, started, and we have evidence to show that it started when the hydraulic dam started in use. Because it wasn't pushing the water along, it wasn't moving the bacteria or the algae or whatever along. It was just basically letting it pool there and taking the water from underneath. So that's a kind of an interesting program, because I understand there's a few projects you're working on here that have hit some roadblocks. So we're happy to talk about that. Just checking time here.
Oh, you're okay.
Are you sure? I'm at 13 minutes. I can
Just keep
stop.
going. No, just keep going.
Are you sure?
Absolutely.
Well, I have a question for you.
Okay.
The question is, you mentioned the rapid test kit for COVID-19.
Yes.
And you've actually seen them in progress.
Yes.
Do you know how much it will cost for an individual to buy them?
There's a bunch of them that are waiting approval.
Right.
There's a whole bunch of them. This one's a 3-minute test. It's like a dietetic test.
Right.
They told me how much. I can't remember. It was very reasonable. It was very reasonable. But there's different ones. I've had someone come in with a smell test. I don't know if they still tell them, but back in the day when I was a kid, you had a stuffed nose. No, it's a very. Anyways.
Camphor.
What's that?
Camphor.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah. So you.
It's inhaler.
That's what I'm trying to get at. Yes, thank you. I drew a blank
They
there.
still have those, you know.
Do they still have them?
Yeah, some-
Well, one company developed this as a COVID test. Because one of the symptoms is when you have COVID, you lose your sense of smell and taste. But this is, if you can smell it, and it's a very distinct smell, chances are very good that you don't have COVID. And with the rapid test I was mentioning with the blood test, the company that was talking to us about it says it's more accurate than the swab you get now. Has anyone had that swab? Yeah, it's not very fun.
Well,
No?
nowhere near as bad as
Okay,
people that had.
yours was a lot more gentle than
It
mine.
was a little tickle. That's all I felt.
Yes, so, so there's a whole bunch that are on the market a lot of them are waiting for approval. Some have been approved, but we need more on the market so that it's widely available to the public. Now with the vaccine part, how that gets distributed and how we are able to produce the amount needed to go around the world is the other conversation going on once these get final approval. And that'll be the challenging part on how we do that. Who kind of gets the first batch when available? Is it the elderly? Is it the kind of the working age? Is it the young? And like, how does that all work? So those conversations are happening, and there isn't much to report on that field as of yet.
I think it should be the first responders. The people,
It could be.
the nurses, the doctors, the people that are dealing with the people that are ill.
Yeah.
First, I mean, they're the people that have put their lives on the line for the last,
And it might be them, yeah.
yeah.
Because if they're going to long-term care facilities, they should.
Well, absolutely,
Yeah.
yeah. So this blood test, COVID test,
Yes,
it's approved in Europe.
yes.
Could we not just email Europe, somebody who's made it, and buy one and have it shipped over?
I
use it
guess
for
you
ourselves?
could. From what I've heard, there's there's a whole stash of them in the market and warehouse waiting for approval from Health Canada.
Oh, for
I
heaven's
guess you
sake.
could, you just, it wouldn't clear you for anything.
No, but it gives you a sense of
It would
confidence.
give yourself a security, a sense of security.
Getting back to your walleye project, Jamie, our dams here are all, the water runs over, they're log dams. Dan Johnson back there, he's one of the fellows that puts the logs in and takes the logs out, so he can tell us that.
Perfect.
But our walleye population is diminishing as well, and I think, and Tim sitting there, he was trying to get some mileage from the MNRF on clearing the spawning beds because they silt up and this sort of thing. Have your group done any work on what we can do to clear those spawning beds? I mean, will Yakubuski be in favor of moving that action forward? Because the fellows that are doing the Zone 15 fish inventories and what should be done, they're reluctant to do anything until they've completed that 2-year study that's now entering year 4, typical. You got any comments on that, Jay?
Sure, yeah, we were dealing with the same issue because the spawning den in Boncation where we want to do the pilot project, we need that cleared away as well. The challenge was, and I thought we were making headway, and then COVID hit, was accessing funding that allowed us to do that. And that's been the challenge, and now with COVID, a lot of the focus, and probably rightfully so, has been on the COVID response and how to deal with that. I've been kind of working with Laurie Scott's office, with Minister Yakubuski's office to try to address those concerns, including the spawning beds, including moving material so that it does provide for a safe place for the eggs to hatch and not be susceptible to predators.
One of the concerns that the MNRF said that they were concerned that sediment that's laying on the beds would then be dispersed out into the lake and cause issues as well. So for your FYI, if you're dealing with Yakubuski, if you could solve that issue, that would go a long way to helping us move forward to rehabilitate these spawning beds.
I will mention that to him because I've been on him a lot about that for a number of reasons. And of course, Scugog is doing a pilot project right now because basically there are no walleye left in Scugog. But so they're doing a pilot project. You probably know more about this than I would in terms of trying to restock that as well. But I will mention to him about that, shoreline improvements, that type of thing, because I think it does apply more to Boncation, or sorry, more to all areas, not just Boncation. And just so the people in Haliburton County know, when I'm talking about the pilot project and moving different channels of water, I'm not asking for more water. Okay, no more water. That would be clear. It's just a different use of the water. The same amount, just bringing over the stop logs rather than the hydroelectric, or the hydro. The hydraulic.
Jimmy, could you clarify something?
Yes.
for me? So we started down a path, myself and a group of guys who live on Canning, HHOA, all part of the Cash chain.